Hey guys, my name is Kunal Chakravarti and I'll be teaching a topic to you today in the concepts of biology and the topic is exchange of gas. Now, in exchange of gas, we are going to cover two topics. Number one is what are the factors affecting the rate of diffusion or exchange of gas, and another topic is how partial pressure of gas is affecting the rate of diffusion. So we are going to learn these two things today in this session. Okay, so let's start with factors affecting rate of diffusion. So what are the factors that are actually affecting the rate of diffusion? See, there are three factors responsible. The first factor is partial pressure of gas. Second factor क्या है? Solubility of gases. And the third factor is thickness of diffusion membrane. So let's start with partial pressure of gases. So always remember that whenever there is diffusion of gas, it will always take place from a higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So diffusion of gases always takes place from a region of higher partial pressure to a region of lower partial pressure. This one is constant. Okay, partial pressure higher to lower, gases will always move from higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So the gases diffuse from a region of higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure Okay, the second factor is solubility of the gas. See, it is very simple. The rate of diffusion is directly proportional to solubility of the gas. If the gas is much more soluble, if it is highly soluble, then the rate of diffusion will be faster. If the gas is less soluble, then the rate of diffusion will be slower. So if I consider carbon monoxide, CO2 and O2, I will see that if oxygen is 1 times soluble in blood, then CO2 is 25 times soluble and CO will be 250 times more soluble. So the rate of diffusion of carbon monoxide will be high, carbon dioxide will be less, and oxygen will be much more less. It depends on the solubility of the gas, but you have to consider, you have to also consider these two factors. You can't consider only this factor. Okay, solubility can be high, but you also have to consider the partial pressure. If you don't consider the partial pressure, then it will be a problem. Okay, now coming to the thickness of diffusion membrane, this is inversely proportional. See, if this is the membrane, let us consider this is the membrane, and the gases will diffuse from this part to this part A to part B. So when the gases will diffuse, they will travel through the membrane like this. Now if the thickness of the membrane is more, it will take much more time to cross the membrane. So if the thickness is more, then the rate of diffusion will be slow. If the thickness is less, then the rate of diffusion will be high. Okay, so thickness is actually inversely proportional to rate of diffusion. So these are the three factors that are responsible for rate of diffusion, that is affecting, not responsible, that is actually affecting the rate of diffusion. Okay, now I am coming to the exchange of gas with the help of partial pressure. Now you will see why solubility of the gas, you cannot take only one factor. If you consider this factor, then CO2 is much more soluble, so our system should have carbon monoxide every time, but that is not the case because partial pressure plays an important role. Now how? See, you can see this diagram. So all of you can see this diagram, and in this diagram you can see I have drawn alveoli. This is the heart. Now let me be quick and explain you this because this is from circulatory system. So this is the heart. Now this is the pulmonary artery which is carrying deoxygenated blood. Let me note it down. This is oxygenated blood. Now this blood is taken to the lungs. From the lungs, oxygenated blood, this blood is oxygenated blood. This is deoxygenated. This is again oxygenated blood. This is aorta. So the blood, deoxygenated blood, is taken to the lungs. From the lungs, oxygenated blood enters the heart again. From the heart, the oxygenated blood is taken to the tissues, and from tissues, carbon dioxide is taken to the heart by vena cava, and this again goes to the lungs. So this is related to circulatory system, but I want to explain you the mechanism of exchange of gas, which is related to the partial pressure. Okay, so let me consider the first case, that is pulmonary artery. See, blood is actually traveling through pulmonary artery and entering the lungs. Okay, so this arm contains a deoxygenated blood. Now if the blood is deoxygenated, then the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will be more here and partial pressure of oxygen will be less. So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide here is 45 and partial pressure of oxygen is 40. Okay, now this pressure is in mm of Hg. This is the unit if you want to ask me. Mm of Hg is the unit, so 40 mm of Hg and 45 mm of Hg. So partial pressure of oxygen is 40, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 45. Now, so you know that the partial pressure of oxygen is less here, partial pressure of oxygen is less, and partial pressure of CO2 is more. But consider the alveoli that is present in your lungs. So in your lungs, you have already taken in air, right? You have taken in air. So you have taken in fresh air which contains oxygen, more oxygen. So the partial pressure of oxygen in alveoli is high and partial pressure of CO2 is less. So what is going to happen? What did I tell you? Gases diffuse from a region of higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So what do you see? That the partial pressure of oxygen is low here and partial pressure of oxygen is high here. So oxygen will come out from the alveoli and will enter into the blood vessels. What you can see, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low in alveoli and it is high in blood vessel. So carbon dioxide will leave the blood vessel and will enter the alveoli. So gases will diffuse from a region of higher partial pressure to a region of lower partial pressure every time. Okay, so after this diffusion of gases, now you know the partial pressure of oxygen is high here. What is the partial pressure? It is 104 mm of Hg, and if you consider the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, then it is 40. So higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. Now the exchange has taken place. Okay, more oxygen has blended in the vessels. Now you have to consider this. So in the first scenario, the partial pressure of oxygen was 40. Oxygen came inside the blood vessel. It became 95. Okay, partial pressure of carbon dioxide was 45 in this blood. Okay, deoxygenated blood. Carbon dioxide was expelled, so 45 became 40. 45 became 40. So in oxygenated blood, the partial pressure of oxygen is 95 and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40. Now this blood will travel from pulmonary vein, enter the heart, and then from aorta it will be traveling to the tissues. Now near the tissues there will be no change in partial pressure, right? So the partial pressure of oxygen will be 95 and carbon dioxide will be 40. Let's see this case. Now in tissue, the tissue is performing a step called respiration, enzyme linked step, that is respiration. Now the output of respiration is carbon dioxide, water and energy, right? So energy is produced. Now if more and more carbon dioxide is produced by the process of respiration, then the partial pressure of CO2 in tissue will be high and the partial pressure of oxygen will be low. And here the partial pressure of oxygen is high and partial pressure of CO2 is low. So now what is going to happen? The CO2 will come out from the tissue to the blood vessel from higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. And what do you see? The partial pressure of oxygen is high in blood vessels, low in tissue, so oxygen will enter into the tissue. Oxygen will enter into the tissue. Now let's see what is the partial pressure. Now in this case, the partial pressure of CO2 is 45 and partial pressure of oxygen is 40. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen is 40. So what do you see? Partial pressure of oxygen in oxygenated blood was 95. Here it is 40. So the oxygen will enter into the tissue from higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. Coming to PCO2, what do you observe? This is 45, this is 40, from higher partial pressure to lower partial pressure. So CO2 will move out. Now compare this. This is deoxygenated blood, this is oxygenated blood. So there has been exchange of gases. So in the first case, oxygen was given out. So since oxygen was given out, the partial pressure will fall. So it will fall to 40 mm of Hg. Okay, and here you see that in this case the partial pressure of CO2 is 40 and in tissue it is 45. So carbon dioxide has been actually expelled from the tissue. So more carbon dioxide has entered the blood vessels. So here there will be increase in carbon dioxide pressure and that will become 45. Okay, so now you will see that this blood is entering the heart and again going here. Now compare this. These two are same. See, PCO2 is 45, PO2 is 40. Okay, so now you have a chart like this. See, this chart is very simple. First is atmospheric air. I have not given you the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide of atmospheric air, but let me give you. It is 159 in case of oxygen and 0.3 in case of carbon dioxide. Now as we enter the alveoli, what is the partial pressure? It is 104 in case of oxygen and 40 in case of carbon dioxide. Now coming to the deoxygenated blood. So this is the deoxygenated blood. What do you observe? PO2 is 40 and PCO2 is 45. In case of oxygenated blood, this is 45. Sorry, I'm very sorry. This is 95 and 40, and in case of tissue it is 45 and 40. Now just compare it, you will get the answer. Okay, so this is the topic which deals with exchange of gas. I guess this is clear to you. If you here we end with this concept and we'll come with more new concepts in the next session. So till then, keep studying, keep reading. Thank you.